Hello, and welcome back to yet another episode of Minority Reportz. I'm your host, Mona Schick. How is everyone doing on this Friday? I am very looking forward to a weekend where I just get to sleep in a little bit more, although I'm not going to because I always have stuff that I'm lining up to do on the weekend. So hopefully I will get some sleep in. How are you guys doing? What are you guys going to be doing this weekend? I'm very excited. Today we have a very, very special guest. I have admired her for a very long time, and I actually am in a little bit of a shock that she was so sweet and humble and kind to accept my invitation, and I'm very excited to have her. She's an OG. What can I say? You've seen her on Conan. She's been on the Winnipeg Comedy Festival. She's an OG. Okay. The very funny Jackie Kashian. Jackie, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good. I'm great. I am not in the middle of the camera. Hi. What? Hi.
There you are. There you are.
I am.
Be the center of attention, Jackie.
I you know what? I had the thing up higher. It's a great story. I'm not gonna tell it anymore because I got bored of the story in the middle of it. Good afternoon, Mona. Where are you? Are you in Canada?
Oh, Jesus, no, I'm in LA.
Oh, okay. I was like, because I thought you said something about Canada. I was like, oh, is she lucky enough to not live in our dumpster fire? Good for her. Good for her.
No, if I did live in Canada, I think this would be the one time I would be like, I live in Canada. Excuse me.
Right.
I live in Canada. I think this is the only one time when Canadians are like, we're hot. Like, we got to go.
Yeah, we're the ones you're going to want to talk to.
Right?
So, yeah.
So how are you? I was asking you before the show started, how are you kind of holding up during the pandemic? Are you, how are you kind of keeping your sanity?
Well, I am. Here's the interesting thing that I was just thinking about is that this is the first time probably in 20 odd years that I've been home this month. I've been home since March 15th. So, and that's almost 5 months or something like that. I've never been home that long. And luckily, because I guess I'm both a social person and a little homebody because I'm doing just fine. But I'm married. So, and I like him a great deal. So what's the longest we've ever spent together. So it's been a delight.
Is it like, because now you're spending so much time home, are you like getting like reacquainted in some sense?
We did, when I would come home off the road, if I was some years, I would spend so much time on the road that when I did come home, it was there was a readjustment, where you're here the whole time. Okay. I need this area. You need to not talk to me because I'm on my computer. And, so it was, there is always some sort of adjustment right when I get off the road. And so now the good news is that we're pretty much used to it now, and so now we've socially arrived. We're fine.
How long have you been married for, Jackie?
Well, we have been married since 2006, Andy and I, and so that is 14. It'll be 14 years, which is great. And then we were together we met 3 years prior to that.
Wow. So in Los Angeles, that's considered 30 years.
Yeah. I said there were some sort of weird, epic. It was amazing. As my sister said, if you're going to wait 17 years for a boyfriend, that's the guy to wait for. And it's a delight. The thing about Andy Ashcraft is that he is enormously sane and an adult man.
Where did you go? Where did you find this unicorn? Where did you find this unicorn?
Exactly. He feels like a unicorn when you're surrounded by, and the thing is it's not that there aren't decent men in stand-up comedy. They don't get any press. But there are plenty of them. And it's, but he doesn't do stand-up. He makes video games for a living. And he is from California originally. He's very much a social. He has 40 close friends that aren't me. Wow. So, he has his own, but it was very important to me that I didn't know how important it was that he have his own life.
Yes.
And that he have something to do.
Yes.
That wasn't, like he needed me to have that too. We don't, when in real life, we don't sit in each other's pockets too much, but I have never been with anybody who I can just hang out with silently as much as I can with him, where there's nothing to do.
One thing I always hear about couples who have been together for more than 10 years and are happy, right? One thing is to be together with someone, but it's another to be happy with that person, right? Which seems to be the case for you. And one of the key things that they always say to me is just like, if you guys can sit together in a room silently and still know what's going on, that tells you the quality of that great relationship.
Right. I mean, there's nothing I like more than just sort of, we don't have the TV on too much. And for a long time, I was like, oh, he doesn't like television. And then I realized he is on a YouTube rabbit hole. He's watching he's watching television without me. Yeah. And that's fine. I'm in my own internet rabbit hole. Right. And then eventually I wander off and go read an excellent to not excellent, the whole spectrum book. A little fiction. I'll read almost anything is what I'm saying.
Oh, really? That's amazing.
Off. Yeah.
Do you mostly read fiction, or do you read autobiography?
No, almost exclusively fiction.
Oh, really?
I like it. Yeah. The fascination now with memoirs and nonfiction and memoirs, in my opinion, count. Those are nonfiction. Yeah. They've been, I'm sure, polished up real nice. If I were to write a memoir, which is what most of my act is, it has been polished. So
now, Jackie, you've been doing, you're an OG. You've been doing comedy for how many years now?
Well, I started, I count the 80s kind of as 1 year. Because I started in 84.
The whole decade.
I started in 84, but it was an intense 1984, 1985, like 1.5. There was a year that was very intense. And then there was 5 years that was very hit and miss because I had to graduate from college. So that's why I sort of count. That first year I did stand up every night for 8 months.
Wow.
And I got a 1.8 that semester. You had to regroup.
Sure.
I was alerted by my sister, who it turns out is the boss of me, that I needed to graduate.
Where did you go to school, and what were you going to school for?
University of Wisconsin-Madison. So I went to UW-Madison, and then and I ended up majoring in poli-sci. I was like 3 or 4 years in.
Yeah.
I was probably 3 years in when they said, you have to pick a major. And I said, well, what does it look like? And they said, you have one more credit toward graduation in political science than you do in ancient history. And I was like, I'm a poli-sci major, it turns out. Thank you very much.
But you never pursued it, though.
No. At the essentially, I took classes that the 80s were sort of it was kind of a heyday of higher education in the United States, where you could get Pell Grants. It was right as Ronald Reagan was ruining the higher education. Pell Grants and loans and all that stuff became much more pejorative and impossible. So I had more money than I had ever had in my whole life with loans and grants. And I took classes that I was interested in. And then I was mostly just interested, I come from a large family, and everybody, it's interesting I think about it now, and everyone in my family they're really very smart. And I'm the youngest. And so there was constantly a lot of chatter about what we should all be believing in politically, what we should all be believing in financially. There was a lot of financial advice, a lot of political advice, a lot of advice. I have 4 older brothers and an older sister.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I have 4 older brothers too.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
And
I'm the youngest and the only girl. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Luckily, my sister had me.
Well, you've already established she's the boss of you.
Yeah, well, it's so funny because there's a very funny story about my grandmother who said, because it goes 4 boys, my sister, and then me. And Darla told me that our grandmother once said to her, it was so nice when you were born because then there was someone to take care of the boys. And
Wow.
my sister said, yeah, you're thinking of someone else.
Yeah, that's the case, isn't it? That's so funny you said that. When I moved, so I was born and partially raised in Pakistan, and I moved at 15 to Jersey City in New Jersey.
Oh my gosh!
And my 4 older brothers lived there. My parents always lived in Pakistan. My brother.
Are you secretly Ms. Marvel? Are you Kamala
I would
Khan?
love to be Miss Marvel. Are you kidding me?
You should totally be Ms. Marvel.
should totally. Miss Marvel's story is my childhood. I shit you not.
She's in Jersey. She's and
She's Pakistani. Jersey City. In Jersey City. Could you get any more specific?
No, it's literally plucked from your life.
Exactly.
She has siblings. You have more siblings, but yes.
Yeah. When I moved out here, my mom primarily primed me and prepared me to cook and clean for my brothers. That's what I was trained to do, Yep. I was expected to take care of my brothers, and I'm the youngest.
Right. So even more of that. So, because you want to also be of some use, right? And there's, and the thing is I don't regret being taught to be of some use.
Yeah.
Because it feels more helpful globally. But my oldest brother was not taught to be of any use. And sometimes that's exhausting. Yeah. I don't know. Yes. And you're just like, hey, why don't you rise to the occasion, my friend? And
put yourself to work maybe a little.
Right. Why don't you?
Did he marry a woman who also just caters to him and takes care of him?
For 35 years, and then she divorced him. And I was like, good for you, Susie. Run like the wind. And
that says a lot, Jackie, when you're on the side of the sister-in-law, not the brother.
Right. My oldest brother, she is my sister-in-law, a lovely woman. She is, her family is Mexican, though I think her family has been in this country longer than mine.
Wow.
But they're from Arizona, Tucson. And, they have 4 kids, and they have that whole thing where girls, it's just the put to work girl business. And, and like I said, I don't have a problem being that person, right? I feel I get some sense of self from being someone who can be that helper, Right. Like I do a joke about how I live my life punched in, thinking that if I don't do all the side work, I'm going to lose shifts. And but the thing is it's not. It can get taken advantage of, obviously. And it's something that just perpetuates a level of sexism that I didn't know existed because I never thought of it like that. Right.
Right. Did you grow up, because you grew up with brothers, did you grow up as a tomboy?
Yeah. And the lucky thing about having my dad and my stepmother, there was very little, there wasn't sexism per se. The sexism that we experienced was in the Armenian church. And it was literally just be like the man in the nice picture and go get your dad some coffee. There was a lot of, your dad's going to want a plate of food. You should probably dash off and get that for him. And that was the extent of it. And then with my father, he treated all 6 of us with the same sort of casual disregard. He was, as I like to say, my father's a lot like radiation. We never saw him, but he affected all of our lives.
I would say that is probably one of the greatest examples I've heard. I would say that is like a lot of ethnic parents, actually. They're like radiation.
Right. Because they're just like, no, when he was around, he was a very powerful figure, and it made a difference, right? It made a difference to how you acted. It made a difference about how you reacted, but he wasn't around. Like, he was working, or hanging out, having some coffee. That guy liked to go have coffee with people. Right. And,
There's no, hey son, tell me how your day was, or hey, what grade are you in, and what's your favorite subject? Like,
my favorite stories are of, we would, when he remarried almost immediately after my mother passed. And, so cause
Were you young when she passed away?
Yeah, I was 7 and my oldest brother was 17.
Wow.
And so, my father and my parents had been separated. So he had been dating this woman who hilariously did not know that he had 6 children. He never mentioned it. They'd been going out for about 2 years and he never mentioned that he had 6
kids.
And my step Nancy was like, and he was always like, I told you. And I'm like, no, I would have remembered. Now, this is one of those things.
Yeah, it's not just one. It's 6 kids.
Like, and he knew, and she knew that he had at least 1, but she didn't know he had 6. And then here's where, she married him after she found out. So this is on her, right? So, but she was
an Armenian lady too?
No, she was, my biological mother was Irish.
Okay.
And my stepmother came from Italian Polish stock.
Okay.
So very Wisconsin, sort of super whitey Magoo, Wisconsinite ladies that he got into. And, but she was
figuratively. So.
Oh my God, so into 6 kids. Anyway, so, but Nancy was great because she just, there was charts, graphs. She was a great loss to the Austrian army. And, but she insisted that we have dinner together. She was like, if I'm going to raise these kids, you're helping. You have to be at dinner. And so we would all sit at dinner. And then my dad would do this thing where he would ask us how our days were. And it was like open mic. You had like a minute and a half to get his attention. It was excellent training.
They're scribbling your jokes. You're like, I think that the tag is not good enough.
Is he going to care about homeroom or is he going to want to hear about civics? What's that?
Is this a good premise today to talk to Dad about? What is this? Oh, man.
Exactly.
Gotta love trauma, Jackie. That's where it all comes from.
Right. And if you think about, somebody did some joke the other day, they said, people are always saying how resilient children are. And sure, they're resilient, but if they're so resilient, why are we all talking about our childhoods for the rest of our lives?
Thank you.
I think that was Ophira Eisenberg, actually. So,
yeah.
Her from NPR. Anyway, she's a New York comic. She's very funny. Yeah.
Anyway. I always like to hear, especially when I talk to comics, exactly stories like you just mentioned, right? Like, I mean, was she a nice lady to you?
She was. I mean, here's the thing about Nancy Kashian. She never wanted children, and she used to tell us that. And she was like, I never wanted children, but we're doing this now. So when it's over, we will love each other and we won't know why. And yes. So she was, the thing is that she was to some extent driven mad by this thing. She loved my dad. She loved my dad so much and wanted to be with him so much. And he can be one of the most casually thoughtless people on the planet. The apple does not fall that far from the tree sometimes with any of us. But he is not particularly. One of my favorite stories about probably 10, 11 years ago now, I was out to lunch with him and he said that he had talked to my sister. And I said, she took your call? And he said, is she mad at me? And I said, well, they had another kid and you never mentioned it. And he goes, well, does she know that I don't care about any of your kids? And I said, do you know that I don't have any kids? He's like, interesting. Anyway, so.
And is he like that with your brothers too, or just towards the girls?
Oh, entirely with my brothers as well. Yeah. Like, wow. So yeah, he doesn't.
That's his vibe. That's just who
it's complete. He is. I don't believe he has not even ever met his great grandchildren. So, he doesn't mind when he sees them. He's very happy. But he is not going to go out of his way. He hopes it all works out.
Out of sight, out of mind. That's how he
Yes. And so, but I will say that one of the good things that did was that it made it, for some reason, am very fidgety. Sorry. You seem to be holding very steady, very professional. You're great.
I usually am horrible, very fidgety.
Like, what? Anyway, so, but I will say this though about my dad is that he was equally attentive and inattentive to all six of us. My brother Russ put more effort into his relationship with my dad. So they have had a relationship for 35 years. That is very, very beautiful and epic.
He's a middle child, right?
He is the youngest of the boys.
Yeah. Okay. He's the youngest. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I had a very tumultuous relationship with my father, like a very tumultuous one. Mainly because my father was very physically abusive towards me, towards my mother. So that was like really rough. So I never kind of, it took me a long time to try to make peace with him. And by the time I made peace with him, literally, I shit you not, I made peace with him and a month later he died. Like, that's how it happened.
Well, universe clearly waiting for you to go, this can't possibly follow me forever. I got to let it go. Let me let it go. And then, oddly enough, he can also keep going.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, dads are, it's interesting, I don't know how that, your relationship with your father, do you think it played a role in the kind of men you dated or the kind of man you're married to? Like, do you think it had an effect on you?
I think probably. I mean, the weird thing is my mother, who passed away when I was little, she was actually very physical with us, not in a positive way. And to my knowledge, she beat him up too, and my dad. So it was like one of the reasons he left.
Or like punching him out.
Yeah, like punching and hurting. Like literally, she was and quite honestly, I've had to make peace with my mother, right? I mean, you have to sort of give it up. And you have to realize that parents are just people who happen to be in charge of you without any sort of experience.
That's right.
And so my mother, when they got married, she was like 16 or 17 years old.
Yeah.
And I think she got pregnant when she was 15. He was 17. They got married. He joined the Navy and was in the Marines because he was a medic. And they just had lots of kids. And my father, as has already been established, wasn't around a bunch, but he would give his check to her.
Yeah.
And then weed off. And then she was like, I have 6 children under the age of 10. And so to some extent, she was driven mad. And so I'm not saying that that's an excuse for the violence that I experienced, but I genuinely don't have any positive memories of her. And so
even as young as 7.
Yeah. Even though I knew her until I was almost 8. So, but I am sympathetic to her experience. Yeah. And, part of it is what my stepmother actually used to say. She'd say, sometimes if you're born in the rain, that's super sad. But if you're 30 and you're still standing in the rain, get the fuck out of the rain. You're a grown-up person. Get an umbrella, get out of the rain. You have to learn how to deal with it. And my stepmother's childhood was fraught with peril, I mean, so there was.
But your grandmother was she born in America or was she born in Armenia?
My grandmother was born in Turkey, and she was driven across Lebanon and Syria in the genocide by the Turks.
Wow.
So she, in many ways, she's been canonized.
Holy shit, Jackie, talk about trauma.
Yes. Yeah, she didn't have a lot of patience for our trauma. She was just like, yeah, walk it off. And
you got hit, I almost got killed. Walk it off.
Right. I don't know if you are familiar, but I mean, there's a story on my last album that I have told easily a handful of times, and 2 of those times was when I recorded the album, because it's emotionally, it's kind of, you want comedy to be funny, and personal, and then when you're driven mad by society, you get weirdly political. Like, I've never been a political comic. I'm a political person. I'm alive. I vote. But with the advent of, Captain Knobjob, I don't know if you can hear, I'm in a helicopter test area.
Oh, no.
But the insanity of it is that there's a couple of tracks. My last album was recorded 6 weeks after the election.
Okay,
and
wow.
so I was still in shock.
Mm.
So that album has, I believe, 55 minutes, and the first 10 of it is the first ever full-on political ranting stand-up comedy that I've ever done in my whole life.
Wow.
And one of those stories was the story of my grandmother being marched across Syria in the genocide. And her explaining it to me when I was a kid, because, when you're a child and your parents or your grandparents have gone through something horrible, you're like, what was it like? And they're like, hey, I've been spending 35 years trying to forget what it was like.
Exactly.
You're 13 or you're 9 or you're 6 and you're fascinated with death or whatever age you are and you're a child. And I remember when I was 13, I was doing genealogy for school, but for school. And so I made her, I was like, tell me about your siblings and your parents. And I was like, well, where are all these people? Yeah. And I made her cry because she's like, they're dead, Jackie, they're dead. And I was like, Jesus Christ, I'm so sorry. And then because I'm 13 and I'm an idiot, I'm like, what was it like? What was the like? And I remember she just looked at me and she's like, okay, so there were probably for every 200 Armenians, there was one Turkish soldier with a gun. And we were marched past these villages in, I believe it was Syria. And so we're marched past these villages. And she said, there was one soldier with a gun. And then she paused and she looked at me and I said, why didn't you just tackle him? There were more of you. Why didn't you just kill him? And he said, and she looked at me and she's like, yeah, none of us wanted to be the first to die. Yeah. So we all died.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? And you're like, she said, and notice she said, we all died. Mm-hmm. She didn't die. Mm-hmm. But as far as, a lot of her died right there. Yeah. Survivor's guilt, all of that bullshit. Yeah. And I, of course, think that she told me that story because she would like me to just die. When there's a guy with a gun hurting somebody, just you've lived a good long life. You're fine. You're a middle-aged white lady now, Jackie. They're not going to kill you. You're fine.
God forbid. First of all, Jackie, God forbid. I pray that never, ever, ever comes at any of our ways.
Right.
That's a real, craziness and tragedy, but that's the reality that we live in. But it's like when I hear stories like that, that story actually reminds me of my story my grandmother used to tell me. But when India and Pakistan had the partition, right? Yes. It was like 6 million people were displaced, right? Which is an enormous amount of people. And my grandmother used to tell me the story that when the trains from India would arrive into Pakistan, because, our family was Muslim, so they had to pick up their stuff and move over and all that nonsense. And she would tell me that the trains would arrive and they would go to the train station to pick up their relatives, and every single person on the train would be dead, including babies. They slaughtered everyone, and vice versa, right? And then these are like images that will just haunt you for the rest of your life.
Forever. And you're like, oh, and how old were you? Oh, I was 16. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Because you're 90 now. And that is still something that is it's entirely in your head.
Yep. And it's I mean, to me, like, their survival stories are amazing. I think sometimes when, I don't know if this happens with you, but sometimes I kind of get in like that kind of self-pity mode, or like I'm standing in the rain without the umbrella.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm standing in the rain without the umbrella, and I'm just like, okay, first of all, they had it way worse than I did. So let's get some fucking perspective here. Okay.
Exactly. Right. And the favorite thing about my grandmother is that she had only like 3 stories about the genocide, and 2 of them were funny. She was always just like, she's like, if I'm going to be telling you stories about these things, let me just tell you the funny ones.
I bet you had more than 3. She just didn't want to go any further into it.
Right. Well, of course. And right. And the 2 she would tell all the time was that when the Turks came into the village to roust everybody out, they were given like 10 minutes to grab their stuff. And she used to say they left bread in the oven, and she would be like, I'm still worried about that bread. And I'm like, I bet you it burned. I bet you it burned, Grandma.
Oh my God.
And then the the general in charge, he goes, he was a nice enough guy. The Turkish general who was rousting us out of our homes said that we could bring our donkey. And my grandmother goes, my grandmother's grandmother was going to ride this donkey, but the village priest, the Armenian village priest, stole the donkey so that we could ride it. And my grandmother, who was 15 or 16 at the time, took a 2x4 and beat the priest off of the donkey.
Yeah,
I know it. I was like, that's a great story. I love that.
That is a Shiro story is what it is. Wow. Wow, Jackie, look at you. Come from a line of warriors over here.
Right, she was a badass, and in the end, what I come from is a line of survivors, which I think is what we should all look forward. I mean, that's the thing, like, because where we're at right now is we just have to survive. You know, every person who says that these are the end times, I just want to go, that attitude is bullshit. Because first of all, it isn't. It never it hasn't been before. It isn't now. And why would you live your life like that? Yep. And second of all, shut up. Anyway,
I look at to me, somebody was asking me, they're like, what do you think is the most resilient thing in the world? And I was like, the human spirit. I really believe that the human spirit is by far the most resilient thing that I've ever come across. I mean, even when ships sink, right? Those giant ships, they go to the bottom of the ocean and they corrode and they pretty much just collapse, right? And then there are these massive things. But the human spirit isn't like that. I mean, you know, like the stories of your grandmother, the stories of my grandmother and what they go through. And they're just like, yep, still worried about that bread. Still worried about that bread.
Exactly. And if you think about like the stories that we pass down from every generation to the next. You know, they're still talking about that guy, Homer. Remember that guy? Homer, not Simpson. The Greek guy. Anyway, so, I mean, they're still talking about the people that have that human spirit. So
exactly. I think, you know, that's why human beings tell stories, right? It is the stories are about human resilience. Like most of the time, that's what it is. And I feel like when people like your grandmother, my grandmother, people who survive and are survivors, you know, I think in their head, they also know that they have a choice. Either they're going to be an example or they're, either going to be an example of like, don't live your life like that, or they're going to be an inspiration. And I think there's something that goes in their head when they're just like, what am I going to be? What am I going to be? Am I going to be an example that I'm just going to fall down and collapse and self-pity myself? And there are those people too. Or am I going to just pick myself up and be an inspiration?
Right. And we all go through periods of self-pity and all periods of what some guy told me the other day that one of his best friends now, when they first met, said, Hey, slow down, man. Nobody's going to take away your anger. You're good. You can keep that as long as you want. Anyway, let's go get sandwiches or whatever. I mean, like, he was just like, it's that perspective. Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know. I mean, I've suffered with anger and like rage issues for a very long time. I've been in therapy for like 13 years now. I'm the first member in my family ever to even go to therapy and to even openly talk about it, mainly because in our culture, there's such a stigma. And I'm not talking about the American culture. I'm talking about the South Asian culture or even the Muslim culture. There's just so much stigma about it. Did you like... I mean, you grew up in a mixed family. You grew up, you know, your mom was Irish, your dad was Armenian. Was that something like, did you grow up with any kind of Armenian traditions that way, or that wasn't a thing for you?
Entirely Armenian. It was, we grew up in the church, and so the Armenian thing was much more hammered into us than the Irish thing. And it was, in some cases, it was because my mother passed away when I was so little. But my dad, you know, it was just a bigger deal. So, and all of like my brother Russ, the golden child, to this day, he's like he's the grand poobah of his church, and and his kids are very into the church and stuff, and they're deacons or they were altar boys, and now they're deacons, and the Armenian thing. But then I moved to Los Angeles, where there's Armenians, you know? I mean, I'm Wisconsin Armenian. And these people are like, and my father was born in this country. And so there's been some melting. We've melted, people. And so I can do food and I can do church. I can't speak Armenian.
Okay.
And if you want me to hate Azerbaijan, it's not happening. It's not happening. So,
well, that's always a thing, right? That's always a thing that you're just kind of, it's interestingly enough, with our family, my dad, which is very surprising, would wake us up on like Sunday mornings. And he had an antenna in a very strange place that he would place outside the window where it would catch this Indian channel coming through where they would tell the stories of the Hindu gods, right? And for us, like as Muslims, we were taught that it was sacrilege and you're not supposed to. But my dad was fascinated by it. And my dad wanted to instill that in us too, where there was like no hating of Hindus. It's like be fascinated by things, open your mind and learn things. And it was very, very, very progressive of him.
Right.
Like, hey, you should learn about the Hindu gods and like waking us up to be like, guys should come and watch the TV and watch these amazing Hindu god stories,
Right.
For our
Right.
family. And of course, it was like on the hush hush. Nobody in the family was told that we were going to do that. Otherwise, it was going to be like sacrilege thing. But what kind of a thing is? I'm sure because of the and the Turkish that committed the genocide against Armenians, which is very alarming to me. That's to this day. Turks like deny it. They're like, we didn't do it. We didn't do it.
Right. And it's, I mean, literally that's why I always think, it's one of the reasons why there's this redemption of the Germans is because they can admit the worst thing that they ever did.
That's right.
That's why I think they're going to be the heroes in World War III. It's going to be very exciting and for them. Good for them. And
oh God, it's already begun. Yeah,
they're vindicated. But they're vindicated because if you admit the worst thing you ever did, you can heal from it, right?
Right.
I have a friend who has since passed away who, went through this, therapy and all of this self-seeking to sort of let go of just sort of the terrible things that are sometimes done to us and which lead us to then do terrible things to other people sometimes. Right. And she was talking about how if she told 4 people the worst thing that she ever did in her life, it didn't matter anymore because it pulled the thorn out. It took the sting out of it and people could be shocked. But she's like, so what I'm doing is I'm making sort of, I'm not doing that anymore,
I like it. I you know what it is? It's the, have you heard of Brene Brown? Brene Brown. Do you know who she is?
I've heard that name. I don't know anyone though.
She's brilliant. She's a brilliant writer. And she has a book called Dare to Lead. And in it, she talks about shame extensively. And different forms that it comes in, at work and at home. And, I'm ashamed of this. And she talked about the power of shame. And I feel like it just like as in an individual, it's the same applies to in a country. If you can't accept a problem, you can't correct it. Right.
Right.
And I think that is that's a huge thing whenever I hear, look, I have Turkish friends, I have Armenian friends. And, when I hear Turkish people, or from the Turkish side say that the genocide never happened, it's like, are you fucking kidding me?
It's because, and the thing is the Turks that I meet, the government has denied it and educated people so thoroughly that when I meet young Turks, Turkish people that are young, not the young Turks, which
is an online program
that they decided to, without thinking, they named themselves after the perpetrators of the genocide. You might want to rename yourself Washington Redskins. Anyway, but the thing is when I meet those young men and women, I am like, no, I understand that you were lied to, but so was I about the Native Americans.
That's right.
So was I about all people of color in this country. And the thing is sometimes, the worst is when I think I know. It's like, oh, I get it. I've been a hippie skippy crystal clutcher since the 80s. I used to say Nicaragua. I've been insufferable for decades.
Oh my God, my dear friends are Nicaraguan, and they're like, it's Nicaragua. And I'm like, oh, Nicaragua.
Right. And you're just like, well, so you think that you get it, and then you get it. Like another layer of the onion is peeled back. When the iPhone camera was invented, and then all of a sudden, every day there's some fresh new horror that is being revealed to me. I'm like, I thought I got racism. And then I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
You got like a veneer of, like there's this whole, because the one of the problems for white people, and I'm speaking to my fellow whitey magoos, is that when I was a kid, we were taught that racism was if you hated someone for the color of their skin. Mm-hmm. When that is not, that is step one. But racism is literally all of it. Right. Just, you're not like my newest layer is that I have to meet every single person like they're a stalk of meat with a brain, right? Everybody's got a different sausage casing. Yeah. Which of course should not lend itself to cannibalism. But like literally meet the meat person standing in front of you with a brain. Right. Don't look at it and go, oh, I would like to fuck that guy. Or I would never fuck that guy. I mean, that's a weird way to meet somebody. Just meet them. Yeah.
Those thoughts only go through my head when I say I don't want to fuck that guy is when I'm around comedians, male comics. That's usually the thoughts that go through.
Aw, poor comedians. They just want to get laid. And boo. That's my theory why a lot of male that's not my theory. It's Lori's theory. Lori Kilmartin has a theory that a lot of male comics aren't doing stand-up because they can't get laid.
Yes, I agree with that.
They're not doing online shows because they're like, what's in it for me? No? Exactly. No one's going to touch my middle bits?
Exactly. My middle bits. I mean, there's only so much pandemic masturbation you can go through, and then you're like, I need help.
Right. I recommend trying new authors, new kinds of porn.
Yeah. And by the way, porn. Speaking of porn, there's a whole stop to porn being made right now.
They can't do it.
Which means a lot of porn is on recycle. Which is about freaking time. Did you know, Jackie, do you know how many porn videos are out there on the internet? Do you know?
No, I do not. How many, Mona?
4.5 billion.
Million or billion?
Billion with a B.
I feel like that's low. That feels low to me.
What
do they consider porn?
Billion? Okay, well, let's just stop making porn for now. We don't need any more porn. My neighbor is a porn star.
Okay.
And she's a trans woman. And I discovered through my neighbors that she is a porn star. And I didn't know that. And she was like, I want to be a stand-up comic. And I was like, it's pretty much like porn. I was like,
you can do it. I mean,
and I was like, but she gets paid a lot better than we do. And you know that, Jackie.
Right. And certainly at beginner levels. Yeah. But I will say there's a woman named Sovereign Sire who was on the Dork Forest.
Oh, yeah,
one of my podcasts. Yeah. And her dorkdom, by the way, was the colonization of Florida, which made me laugh. Anyway, by the Spanish. But she is a porn actress. And she has not been working, obviously, for the last 5 or 6 months, like you do. Yeah. So she has started, I think that there's, like, everyone's doing sort of lateral things now, right? Yeah. You've got to reinvent the stream, the income. And whatever income anybody does have, like there are people who are still working, and those people still want to pay for porn. Yeah. And so she started, like, I think an OnlyFans. Yeah, or a Cameo or some sort of there's ways that you could pay Sovereign Sire to show her ass to you or whatever you would like to see.
Sure. And by the way, Sovereign is a brilliant woman. She used to be an educator. Did you know that she was a professor? She was a teacher.
I didn't know that she was in the porn industry when she was on the Dork Forest. I just thought she was a very smart, because she was doing stand-up when we met. And I just thought she would be interesting and smart and on the Dork Forest. And then her website is porny, it turns out. It's slightly porny. And so I got a lot of emails from people saying, hey, you might want to warn people. I'm like,
she's pretty great. And she's a fellow New Yorker. So I really love talking to her.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, she's very she's a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, speaking of guys and why they want to do comedy, let's get into that. Brian Callen is the recent victim of
is he the recent victim?
I'm not even going to call him the victim. I'm going to call him the recent predator that has been outed.
Right. He clearly, I mean, and I'm 100 years old, you guys. I have met so many dudes, and you know how they talk about people.
You're not 100 years old. Stop it.
Right, but I've been doing stand-up for so long. I have met so many comics that are varying degrees of predators, right? Yeah. Where there's a spectrum.
Yes.
And so many of these people are on the spectrum of predatorism.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, this COVID haircut is driving me nuts, right? Because I'm looking too much at me. You look great, by the way. Anyway, so going forward.
You look fine. I don't know why.
I don't know why I'm twitchy as all hell, but it's all working.
Are you uncomfortable in that chair? Do you want to get in another chair?
Maybe. Hang on.
Yeah, the chair doesn't seem very fun. Yes, the foldable chair, baby, bring it on.
This folding chair. Maybe this will be. I'm in my garage, which we added this tiny room right in March. We had planned to do it, and so it is just a tiny room attached to our garage, and it is very slowly being decorated. And so right now, folding card table, folding chair. Anyway,
it totally worked. Jackie, look, you've been around for a while. Did you experience a lot of predatorial behavior? And you started comedy when there weren't a lot of female comics. Now there's so many female comics.
There's a lot of female comics. What I did not know, and I've talked about this before, is that there was only, and this still happens. Obviously, we have a woman on the show, and you're it. There's one woman.
Yeah.
And so most of my career, I was the only woman in the room. And so I didn't know that it was sexism. I thought it was just ball busting. I thought it was just, but what is one of the great things, how civilization is very ponderous and very slow, but inexorable and fucking coming for your jackass shitty behaviors. Yeah. So, but the thing is there's enough women in comedy now that there's someone to fucking make eye contact with. I was in a room once with Beth Stelling.
Yeah.
And some banana head, some just, some goofball said something horrible. And I had someone that I could look at and go, did you hear that? That was dumb. And we got to at least look at each other and go, oh, yeah, that was dumb. Yeah. And so it's nice to have someone that you can commiserate with instead of just having to suck it up. Like any number of horrible, like the one that I distinctly remember is some fucking maroon who said, hey, we're gonna go. It was late. We were all hammered. It was after the show. We were gonna go get breakfast. And I was like, hey, are we gonna go get breakfast? And the guy goes, the club owner was like, yeah, you can come if you'll sit on my face. And I was like, hey, can we just go to breakfast? And so like essentially it's
like just bored.
It's just bored. And these guys they're just trying to shock you. Like there were several dudes who'd like show me lesbian porn because they thought it was funny. They just have it on. And we were going to watch somebody's set on VHS, and they'd put in lesbian porn and then watch me like a dog, And you're like, you're a moron. And so I tell these stories to women comics and even male comics that are younger than me, and they have that look that is on your face right now, and they're like, "You tolerated what?" And so, just a basic warning to the guys that are coming up now. I am the last generation of women that you will ever hear say, "He's a nice enough guy." You just don't want to be alone with him. He's all right. Just stand by the door.
Jackie, I would absolutely second that, first of all. And because God knows if a guy comes at me that way, I think my first reaction would be to grab the sharpest thing nearby and jab it either in his eye or his thigh. I can't.
Right. And I remember just, and the thing is, you're just like, oh, he's all right. He's just gross. And you're like, actually, he doesn't realize that he's in the workplace and he maybe shouldn't say shit like that.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, they're comics. And you're like, no, because I'll tell you something. The male comics that were also sitting there that weren't gross monsters.
Yeah.
They were I would sometimes make eye contact with them and we'd be like, oh, fuck. He's the booker. I'm so sorry. Yeah. And you would tolerate these things that they're unnecessary. They're just like,
yes,
it isn't cool. And it's going away.
You know what it is, Jackie? I feel like there is so much gutting that still needs to happen, especially in the comedy world. I feel like, it started with Louis C.K. and of course Bill Cosby, and it's been like a bit of an avalanche. But quite frankly, I feel this. So this is how I feel about it, right? So straight white guys or people like Bill Cosby have been outed. However, there are these other ethnic groups, right? Like whether they be Middle Eastern guys or South Asian comedians who are very well established. And one of the ones I was mentioning to you was Russell Peters, who is literally listed on Forbes as one of the top the wealthiest comedians on the planet, right? He's on the fucking Forbes list, okay? And a lot of people don't even know him because he's such a global comic. And Chris Rock calls him the most famous comedian nobody knows. That's what Chris Rock calls him. And he's worth a lot of money. And he has been a sexual predator for a very, very long time. But he never gets called out. And I now will start telling my story about him. And people are just like, oh my God, really? Are you sure? I'm like, am I sure that I was fucking sexually harassed? Yeah, I'm pretty fucking sure.
Yeah. I was there, it turns out. Yeah. But the thing is from the perspective, in the moment, you don't realize what's happening to some extent because you're like, oh, well, maybe this is just locker room talk. Maybe these are just these dude bros and how they talk. But I will say that in that story that you just told, there are no sexual predator stories of Chris Rock. I've heard stories where Chris Rock has been an asshole, but not a monster. There's stories where I've been an asshole, but also not a monster. Yeah. So, and I will say that there's no reason. We've tolerated it. And I remember this too. This is the other thing is when I was coming up, when I was a little kid, I remember the other thing that I was told about racism that is also true about sexism is that I was told that this was old guy shit. This is just old people. They're going to die off. Well, I'm so sorry. There's somebody who's 35 years old that's been on deck wanting to be a sexual predator.
That's right.
And those, Chris D'Elia, and I mean, that guy's in his 30s, I think.
Brian Callen.
I think that guy's 40. I mean, these are guys that should know better, right?
Right.
And Callen, I mean, he did a heartfelt to the camera, I didn't do this. This isn't real. I categorically deny that this ever happened, which is an interesting premise. He's like, I believe in the Me Too thing, because this gives a voice to women of these things, but I didn't do this. This is not me. And I also believe in due process. And why was this never? And you're like, here's the thing. I believe that that there's levels to this shit, right?
Yeah.
There is premeditated Bill Cosby. I'm putting a roofie so that I can fuck the unconscious.
Sure.
And then there's Louis C.K. She's not a big deal. So I'm just going to block the door with my hard dick in my hand. And she's like, hey, and she's going to jokingly say, man, hey, we don't need to see this. Can we go? And that's going to get me more excited. And I'm just going to finish real quick here. I'm almost done. And, every time, and I've been date raped twice, right? And both times the excuse was, I'm almost done. And literally you're like, fine. Which isn't anything that anyone should ever have to say.
Ever, Jackie.
Right. You shouldn't, and I shouldn't think it's funny that I'm like, fine, just fucking finish but there's another part of me that's always been raised to like, it's just sex. Who the fuck cares? But it's also, it's my body, Don't be a piece of shit.
It's a violation, Jackie. It's a violation. That's what, it's invasive. First of all, I am so sorry that you had to endure and go through that shit.
Right.
I almost got roofied and got raped. And I escaped it because I realized that he had put something in my drink.
Right.
And he was trying to grab my hand and like take me to his hotel room, and I started screaming, and I was like, "Get the fuck off of me!"
That's it.
Yeah, and I was like, "Get the fuck off of me, or I'm gonna."
But if you're scared, if you're intimidated, if you've been raised to think, well, I guess I should just suck it up, it'll be fine.
Right.
Those are all not true. Those are not true. Gentlemen, don't rape and drive safe. That's a Chad Daniels joke. That's how he raises his son. He's got a bumper sticker that says every time his son left the house when he was 16 and above, he'd go, hey, drive safe and don't rape. And so it's...
Those are very valid points. Those are two very, very valid points.
Chad Daniels, and we should, the thing is there are so many great male comics that are very funny, straight white guys even. You don't have to support shitbags.
That's right.
And if you should support someone who's horrible,
yes,
investigate why you're doing that.
That's right.
What are you getting out of that? Are you getting a tacit approval of your own shitty behavior? The fact that you're not going to ever try to fix yourself?
That's right.
Because literally I'm defining people that support Donald Trump and always have. Right. Because that guy, nobody fails upward like that guy. And he makes it okay for worm people to act like shitty worm people.
Yep.
But who's famous? Chris Rock could say, the most successful comic that nobody's ever heard of is Brian Regan. Brian Regan is a good guy.
He's one of the best guys out there. Ian Bagg is one of those too. Ian Bagg is a good guy too.
Right. But Brian Regan, I opened for the guy, and it's so interesting to me because when I first started opening for him, I was the first woman that opened for him. And he was like, we gotta, he's been hanging out with his buddies for 20 years. Yeah. And this is how people book people. This is how people employ people. You book the people that you hang around with. And if you want more diversity, if you'd like to mix it up, Louis Lee, the guy who owns Acme, always says this. He's like, you know who's got money? Other people. If I book all straight white guys, it's covered. But who might come to the shows if I also book them? Lesbian women, black men, whatever, but all the different people. There's a niche group that will come and give me $20. And then they want their perspective told as well.
That's right.
And so there's work, there's money there, and don't leave it on the table.
Yep.
And so,
Jackie, that's a very valid point that you just brought up. So speaking of niche, so this podcast that I do, Minority Reportz, it's also a nationally touring comedy show, right? So I started off at the Comedy Store like 5 years ago with the show. And then I took it to, I started touring with it. So I took it to Orange County. And, you talk about diversity, right? You talk about diversity. We did a Desi Girls Night. Desi is a slang way of saying South Asian. And we had 300 South Asian women show up. Just to
fascinated, excited, shocked. What? This is going to be right?
I was like, wait, what the fuck is happening right now? And then I get a call from LA Times. They're like, hi, did you know that you're the talk of the town? I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? They're like, people are like clamoring to get to your show because their market is never catered to. And you're bringing a show that is never catered to. These women, Jackie, did not want to go home. After the show ended, it was a giant dance party. They refused to go home. One woman got drunk off her ass and she was like, I'm fucking tired of talking to my husband. I'm fucking tired of making sandwiches for the kids. I just need one night to go wild.
They got to meet other people. They got to meet other like-minded people who were also looking for like other comedy fans that also happen to be South Asian. You know, you're just like, this is good for absolutely fucking everyone. So Brian Regan, so I'm the first woman, and he, you know, I get this call from, first of all, his manager emails me. He's like, have you heard of Brian Regan? And I was like, yes. Yes, I've heard of Brian Regan. He's like, he watched one of your videos online. He was wondering if you'd be interested in opening for him. And I'm like, yes, I'm interested in opening for him. And then I show up, and he's at some performing arts center with thousands of people. The only way that I could open for him was to think it was funny, because it's, I walked in I did Carnegie Hall with him.
Wow.
And I laughed, and he was like, what's so funny? And I said, your career is hilarious and wonderful, Brian Regan. Anyway, but what you do, he has a bus, right, with bunk beds, and he more or less lives on it. And then the tour manager and the comic, everybody has their own bunks. And because sometimes you drive in between gigs, right, like a band kind of. And he didn't want me to be uncomfortable, so he invited his children and their nanny to be on the first like 4 or 5 weekends that I did with him.
Wow.
Just because he wanted to he was like, I know that I'm going to be respectful, but I don't want her to be nervous at all. And I was like, I have been hanging out with the disrespectful, and it's going to be fine in any case. But I had genuinely appreciate. You know what Brian Regan is? He's a thoughtful adult man.
Yeah.
They exist. It's a delight.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many, like, Chad Daniels should be Louis C.K., right? He should have that fan base because he is sane and hilarious.
Yeah.
And not an idiot, not a monster, not a bad person. Yeah. There's Augie Smith. Augie Smith is sort of the Joe Rogan, but sane and nice.
And not a Trump supporter.
And not a fucking moron. Like, the thing about Joe Rogan is that he's he's just a finger, man. The guy's just a giant button pusher, and who I don't want to hang out with anymore are a bunch of fingers. I don't want to hang out with those guys.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, look,
I do have a dream of being fingered to death. That's how I want to go. That's what I love.
Jackie, I think you already got that covered. You married a good man.
Exactly.
I just want to die when I've reached an orgasm, and then it's over for me. That's exactly how I picture my death, which would be amazing. I mean, you were talking about Brian Regan, and you knew that, and he was so kind and thoughtful that he brought a nanny and to make sure that, you get comfortable. It's interesting because Russell Peters, speaking of going back to him, watched one of my very beautiful friends, a very funny comic friends, at the Laugh Factory. She gets done. She comes on stage, and he looks at her and he goes, "That was a very funny set." Person's name. I don't want to reveal her name because she's not ready to. And she goes, "Oh my God." She goes, "Thank you so much." She goes, "Hey, Russell, I know you tour around the world. Like, I would love to go on tour with you. I would love to open for you." And he goes, "Aw, I would totally let you, but I would want to fuck you the entire time. So probably not."
Right. Which is a classic. That's an old chestnut. That old chestnut is something that guys would be like, well, but I had a guy one weekend, the whole week, he's like, we had to share a condo, and he was like, let's just fuck. We're here. We just have each other. There's nothing else to do. We're going back to the condo anyway. And every night he would say it. And every night I'm like, it's not happening. And then New Year's Eve, he was like, it's New Year's Eve, man. Let's just fuck. And I'm like, I was like, we've had 4 days of this, dude. It's not happening.
Jackie, you didn't have the urge to just punch him in his ugly mouth?
No, I did have the urge to put my chair in front of my door, though, and he wasn't. And here's the thing: he wasn't threatening. He was just, but that is threatening. I mean, if you think about it, right? But I was like, you're an idiot, but other people who would seriously take that, they'd be like, no, that is a threat. He is actually saying, the inference is that we should just do this. You should just cave and just do this.
Correct. That's correct.
But
please tell me this person is not famous or doesn't work anymore.
Oh, he works. Are you kidding? He's just an old dinosaur of a dude. He's one of the comics I do this bit about now, about how there's 4 dudes who have said, you can't even flirt anymore, man. You can't even flirt. You talk to a woman, she thinks you're harassing her. And I bet you he thought that was flirting, because that is not flirting. Because, and I looked up the definition of flirting. It turns out flirting actually is harassment. It's either successful harassment or unsuccessful harassment. But I will say that and the best definition of flirting that I read, and I read a bunch of them, was this one. Get this one. An interaction with another person wherein you make the other person feel good about themselves. And I was like, who is doing that? And then I realized it's my dad, Elliot Kashian, aging horn dog. My dad hit on Maria Bamford, one of my best friends, at my wedding.
What?
And and in his defense, she was at that time a tiny 35-year-old blonde woman, which is his favorite kind of person in the whole planet. And she told me this recently, and I said, I am so sorry. And she goes, don't be sorry. He didn't touch me. He didn't even say anything weird. I just got the impression that he thought I was pretty. And I was like, that's the weird definition of flirting. How did he do it? And she goes, I have no idea. And so I went home and I asked him, and that is a longer story, but it was amazing.
I have managed to, in my career thus far, managed to build a reputation of Mona will tell you to go fuck yourself to your face. So don't approach Mona that way. Which is a good thing. I'd rather come across as a hard ass shrew versus having to deal with it and then trying to process it.
Well, to some extent, it feels like, and this is, I don't understand why I have to finish raising a 30-year-old man. There's like that actually is not okay that you said that, right? Why do I have to explain that to you? You're a grown-up person. But I will say this, do you know Sean Patton? Have you ever seen Sean Patton?
No, but I've heard that name.
He's one of we're in a comedy boom right now. Right now, it's women. There's like all of the younger, like 28 to 40. These women who've been in it for like 10 to 15 years are blowing up, and they're super smart, and they're awesome comics. Yeah. But about 15 years ago, there were these dudes. There was a whole pile of the bearded youth movement. Remember those guys? Yeah. It was Kyle Kinane. Yeah. And Sean Patton was on the tail end of that. But Matt Bronger.
Now I remember. Yeah.
Anyway, but he's got this great story. He grew up outside of New Orleans. He grew up in Louisiana. And he tells this crazy ass story of him he was the dishwasher at some restaurant. And he hit on there was a Christmas party, and he hits on the woman, the hostess, the woman who seats everybody. And she is cruel and is mean because he's 17 and she's 23 and he's Sean Patton and she's like, he's the dishwasher, and they're at this Christmas party for the thing. And then he sees the cool waiter roofie her beer and he switches beers because he has the same kind of beer. And so he tells this amazing story of how he did this. And I was like, after she was mean to you, and he was like, well, that didn't have anything to do with it. Right. It was just, you don't let someone be rude. And I was like, yes, because you're an adult man. Yeah. You're a grown-up human being.
At 17.
At 17. Yeah. And then the funny part of that story was that he then drank that beer because he was 17 and poor. So he roofied himself. And
That is by far one of the most hilarious.
I think it's on his current album, Sean Patton. You should find it because it's fucking hilarious.
That is so funny and then so touching.
Yes.
He must get laid based off that story.
I believe him to be in a committed monogamous relationship.
Oh, he is.
I do not know.
He's definitely getting it on the regular. And good for Sean. He should get it on the regular.
Yes.
Good for him.
He's a good guy. Yeah.
Man, I honestly feel like, whenever here's the thing, Jackie. So when the whole Chris D'Elia thing came out, right? Look, I love Neil Brennan. I have respected him for a long time. But Neil Brennan came out and said that I will give $1,000 or something stupid like that for every proof that's shown or given to me that
and then tweet deleted. Tweet deleted.
So my thing is, Jackie, that whenever comedians like male comics come out and support other predator, I stop and I say, what kind of skeletons do you have in your closet?
Right. It isn't cool.
Yeah, and then Neil totally pivoted and totally changed the conversation and was like, "Oh, look at the birds! Aren't the birds so pretty?" And you're like,
"Shiny." Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, you were fucking giving away $1,000." That's another thing, Jackie. When I look at you, when I look at you, Lori, when I look at other female comics, that have made a name for themselves and are up, really coming up the pipeline and really making some strong statements, we don't need men to speak on our behalf. We are very fucking capable of speaking on our own fucking behalf.
Yeah, and the learning curve right now for Whitey Magoos on that same topic, and men,
straight male Magoos, Jackie, straight male
Magoos have it's just tick a lock time. It was very funny. One of my a couple of my brothers have recently discovered sexism and told me that there might be more sexism than I might know about. And I was like, no, boots on the ground over here, buddy. And but because it's so funny talking to them because they are the best. My brothers are the closest I get to being, and my husband, that I get to being treated like a person. Okay. Just a piece, just a stalk of meat with a brain. Yeah. And like my brother's like, I treat you like people. And I was like, very close. You're almost nailing it. But, it's that whole thing about what women want or what anybody wants is literally just to be able to make, the gold standard of being a person is a straight white guy.
Yeah.
And if you Google on YouTube, if you YouTube Google the words bad male decisions, there is a rabbit hole that has no bottom. I spent a half an hour watching dudes with ladders. Just ladder in a wheelbarrow, ladder on a goat, just ladder on a tippy thing, where it's just one guy after another going, it's just going to be a second, I'm just going to get up there real quick, and then bam! And at no time is there another dude going, hey man, wait a minute. But you could picture a guy going, hey man, wait a minute while I grab my camera. Because literally, and if you YouTube Google bad female decisions, crickets, there's nothing there. And it's not that we aren't dumb. We're stupid. We're just as dumb. But we can't film it because they would lock us up. And we just want to be treated like someone who can make regrettable decisions and then just either be made fun of them or be supported in them, right?
Absolutely.
And yes, I am somewhat talking about abortion. Anyway, and everything, absolutely every decision any woman's ever made, it should just be, oh, you're a person who made a dumb decision.
Yes.
I had ice cream for breakfast. It was
100%.
dumb.
100%. Jackie, I feel like, you tell me how you feel about this. Do you feel like when male comics come out and get very angry about topics, about social justice, and they do these rants and everybody's like, oh my God, yes, you're so wise. And then you come out or I come out and do a passionate rendition and do a passionate rant. And that is also funny, but also angry and passionate. They're like, she's really angry. Like she's really.
Oh, completely.
Like,
I saw it one night. The night before I'd seen Bill Burr, and Bill Burr is very funny and he is ranty as all hell.
Yes.
And he murdered
very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. No tales have been told. I know nothing about Bill Burr. Never. He's always been distantly polite to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, so which is all I've ever wanted out of anyone more successful, quite honestly.
Yeah.
You don't have to want to be my best friend. It's okay. Because I get it. You meet a lot of people. Yeah. So anyway, Bill Burr, very funny, does this rant, and the audience on their feet carried him off stage. No, they didn't. But I mean, like literally they were psyched. The next night, Eliza Schlesinger did something very comparable. And it was also very funny. And the audience was almost there for her. Mm-hmm. It was very parallel. And granted, Bill Burr has been doing stand-up probably 10 years longer than she has.
Sure.
So he's got more chops. But it was exactly what you said. You know, I mean, the jokes were there. The premises were there. It was the same type of thing.
Yeah.
The response was very different because sometimes it's very different. Audience sees a big sausage wrapping and they're like, I don't like Italian sausage with a vagina.
Exactly.
What just happened?
I don't want to hear this kind of estrogen talk coming at me.
Well, when I first started, there was a guy who was there in the very beginning who did this. I was the only woman, as per usual. And it was me and 6 other comics in Madison, Wisconsin, when we first started doing stand-up. And there was a guy who sort of did one-on-ones with us where we would record our stand-up, and then he would go over our set with us and help us out. It was unsolicited, always a terrible idea. Stand-up comics, unsolicited advice, always terrible. Okay, so, but he meant well, and we all sat through it because he was a Comedy Store guy in 1984. We didn't know he had also been doing stand-up comedy for 2 years, but he sat with us, and when he sat with me, he told me that nobody wants to hear women swear. And he replayed me saying the word fuck over and over and over again on this tape. He's like, see how unattractive? And the audience just tightens up on you. You don't want that. And I was like, interesting. He said one thing that made sense and is true. When you swear, it's lazy writing. But sometimes it's lazy writing that has a hard K on it that really makes the joke work a lot better. Yeah. So fuck that guy. But the thing is,
indeed. Actually, fuck that motherfucker. Let me be very specific on that one.
What a piece of shit. Anyway, but
I love to curse, Jackie. That's how I keep my teeth white. Are you fucking kidding me? I love to curse.
Oh yeah, it's a good one. I like the thing I do a lot of different kinds of shows, obviously, and I can do all the kind of shows you want me to do.
Right.
And so whenever a corporate happens, like I've been doing online, I've been doing these things that I call Mini Muffin Monday shows. Mm-hmm. And it's essentially, what would you spend for a month of Mini Muffin Monday for your corporate? Would you spend $500? Do you want me to do, I'm like, I'll do for you and your friends or you and your coworkers a 10-minute set for $100, a 30-minute set for $500, or a 45 to 60-minute set for $2,000. At which point my husband has said, Andy goes, I take it you want to do a 10-minute set? Anyway, and I was like, well, I kind of want to do the 30. And I've done a couple of 30s. And so, but in both cases, they were sort of small, there were 3 or 4 of them now. And I was just like, just tell me, I don't have anything filthy. I don't have any sort of, I don't think about bodily functions when I'm on stage. I tend to think bodily functions when I'm having them. I don't have any jokes. Right. And I'm not particularly dirty, but I do swear sometimes. So if you don't want me to do that, is what I always say during corporates, pipe up, because my brain is attached to my mouth, and we can wrap it up.
You know, Jackie, one of the things that I also think about a lot as a female comic, and also as a female comic, because it plays a huge role, and that's the thing we're talking about here, is the fact that when you look at the top 10 list of the most successful comedians, there is not a single female comic on that lineup. I want to know how further along is it going to take for us to get that female George Carlin, to get that female Richard Pryor, to get that female Chris Rock, to get that female Bill Burr? When do we get
I've been in a comedy club, but there's always a poster of Lucille Ball. and I always want to light it on fire. She didn't do stand-up, Lucille Ball. I don't know. I can't fucking deal with it. Yeah. I don't know. But, I was like, you go into a helium, and heliums are kind of state of the art as far as chain club goes, right? I mean, they've nailed it 6 times across the country. They're beautiful clubs. They're run incredibly well. And there's always 1,000 pictures of 11 by 17 photos of a bunch of dudes.
Yeah.
And I would love it if there would be a picture. And sometimes there's Whitney Cummings, and sometimes there's Nikki Glaser, and sometimes, but I mean, the thing is, you could put, there's comics, Wendy Liebman has been doing stand-up comedy since before me and should be on television, in my opinion, every night doing a different 4.5 minutes until she runs out of 4.5 minutes. And what will happen is 365 days later, you will have had a year of Wendy Liebman. Yeah. And so fucking put a picture of Wendy Liebman on the,
Joan Rivers. I mean, come on.
Joan Rivers, you could do that. Miss Pat. Are you kidding me? From Chicago. And these Judy Gold, these are people that are still working. Paula Poundstone. Yeah. You want women that have been doing it for 40 years. You want women who've been doing it for 30 years, right? Mm-hmm. You could do Maria Bamford. You could do Sarah Silverman. And then there's all these new, young, awesome comics.
Then one can also do Jackie Kashian.
Sure. You could do, I got good pictures, you guys. I got a nice headshot. Frame it nice. Put it right up there.
Pictures, Jackie. I like them. I like them a lot.
I got good headshots.
Yeah, I recently saw you in a plaid shirt, and I was like, man, I love plaid shirts. And my gay friends recently told me, they're like, plaid shirts are very big with lesbians, and I was like, am I the most straight lesbian that's out there playing?
You guys don't get to own plaid shirts. What? Everybody can get to wear
plaid shirts.
Sometimes they're in vogue, the plaid shirt, and plus they're colorful. And you know what I have taken from some of my friends?
Comfort.
They're super soft and comfortable. Yeah. But I like in headshots for sure. I like a lot of primary colors to sort of it helps. Right? It makes the whole picture pop, and they're more fun. It's more vibrant.
I agree with you.
I'm a very likable comic. It is made more plain to people when I am in a bright color.
Relatable.
Exactly.
So relatable. Speaking of relatable, what the fuck is going on with Ellen DeGeneres?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I mean, here's the thing. There's two ways to go with this. Of course, she's an asshole. That's too bad. Sometimes your boss is an asshole. Yeah. Second thing is nobody's called her. I mean, there's a problem with famous people in general in the fact that nobody tells them that they're being a dick, and people just tolerate shit. If you think about Mitch Hedberg, who was a delight, he was a very sweet man. Also, incredibly thoughtless, not the most thoughtful guy on the planet, but a huge heroin addict in addition to that. Right. Not everybody, they booked him weeks. They booked him with Dave Attell, Lewis Black, and him on a tour 2 weeks out of rehab. And Lewis Black has a hollow leg. That guy drinks. Dave Attell had a show on Comedy Central about getting drunk. And why don't you let Mitch, he didn't need the money, give him a year, give him 3 months, man. Yeah. He could be alive to this day.
Yeah.
Mitch Hedberg, one of the sweetest guys in the world, and super silly, smart comic. If you get a chance, if you don't know him, to the people watching, if there are people watching.
I mean, and very original, incredibly original.
Yeah, super fun and original and smart and sweet and great. There's so many, and whenever anybody, I don't know. I've heard for years that Ellen is a shitty boss. That's what I've heard scuttlebutt wise. I didn't hear that she was a monster. Yeah. And I didn't hear that she was, I heard that she was just really hard to work for her. And you lasted as long as you lasted till you got your WGA insurance and your credits. And then you did a lateral move to someone who wasn't such a pain in the ass to work for.
You know, I had heard about Ellen DeGeneres from two of my friends, and they're both in the business. One is actually a comedian, a female comic by the name of Chris Farah. She's an Arab comic. She's a great gal. And when she before she got into comedy, she used to wait tables, and so she's waiting tables, and Ellen DeGeneres and Portia come in, and she's serving them, and apparently she had a chipped nail. And Ellen DeGeneres apparently got up and went and spoke to the manager and said that she does not want this server because she had a chipped nail and she had to look at it every time she would approach her table. And Chris Farah just did an interview that actually just came out today. I think I forget one publication it came out on, and she tells her story.
That sounds like OCD. That sounds like this woman's dirty somehow,
right? Because she has a chipped nail. But I mean, if you just take that, and if you have to work with somebody like that, who's like, you can't even make eye contact with me or some bullshit like that, you're just like, oh my God, seriously? Here's the thing, Jackie. We're all adults, right? If you're being an asshole and you're on a successful ass show, you're going around talking about kindness and smiling and happiness and fucking kumbaya and shit, okay? And then you're a total fucking
jackass. Yeah.
Let me use a lighter word. Cunt. If you're a total cunt backstage, that is a problem. That is a problem, Jack.
That's a real problem. The problem, and it's about, we were talking about it before we got on, which is the power thing. You know, is that someone gets power and then they get this attitude, you know, and here's the thing is, from what I've heard, is that some of these people were perfectly nice people before. Like, I have 2 podcasts, and I have, I don't know, maybe 11,000 hardcore fans. Let's say that, right? Yeah. And those are some very, very nice people who like me and who cut me a great deal of slack. Yeah. They could also. They also email me and tell me when I'm being a dick. But the thing is it's mostly because I'm accessible, right? But I think that you can get to a point where you have hundreds of thousands of fans, where if you don't have either the upbringing or the self-esteem, like if you have a self-esteem problem and you're like, okay, finally enough people like me, I can be the piece of shit I've always wanted to be. Like, if you think about it, like Mark Maron has hundreds of thousands. He's got millions of fans, right? Yeah. And he is enormously successful. Yeah. He's done the work. Yeah. He's done the work on himself to be a better person, where he questions he questions his attitudes, he questions his actions, and it's part of his shtick now, but it's questioning your attitude and questioning your actions is a learned task anyway. It's a muscle memory thing that started when Mark Maron didn't have millions of fans. Right. So luckily now he's still checking it, and he's still like, am I, you know, he has a famous thing. And I remember he did it to me in 1999, came up to me at the Improv, and he goes, why don't you like me, Kashian? And I was like, what are you talking about? You're the one who doesn't like me. I'm always super nice to you. And he's like, I like you. And I was like, why are we having this conversation? And so, but he thinks that people don't like him. So he's sort of that overcompensating, wants to be a good guy. Yeah. And that's like, we started talking about that, like I was the youngest of 6 and little, you know, pick up, go get your dad some coffee kind of thing. Yeah. This creates a sort of it's created in me anyway, a desire to be of service to other people. And I think in some ways that makes you a better person. You know, I mean, as long as you don't let people, as long as you don't let it be the only thing about you, and you don't let people take advantage of it, you have to have some boundaries, right? Some people have to learn those boundaries. Right. And that's a muscle memory thing too. Sure.
I agree with you. I think it's exactly that, right? I think what you're talking about is accountability. is what you're talking about. He holds himself.
Yeah.
He holds himself accountable. You hold yourself accountable. I hold myself accountable. But I feel like some people, maybe it seems like in Ellen's case, I mean, this is not just one or two people. I mean, these are tons of people.
Yes.
I mean, these are people that are serving her fucking pasta, for God's sake. And they're like, dude, she's being a bitch to me. Like, why?
Well, right. And I have heard many comics and many writers and many people that have worked with her over the decades say that she's very hard to work with. But it is, part of that is created by the pressure that those people put on themselves. I heard Letterman was very hard to work for too, because he had such a perfectionist attitude, and he had such a, there's a reason Eddie Brill didn't have women comics on that show. And it wasn't because Eddie Brill was unwilling to have women on that show. It was because David Letterman didn't want to have women on that show. Mm-hmm. And that's the way it was. I mean, that's the way it was, just stop it. Yeah. Right? Like, stop.
He got out just in time. Let me tell you that, Jackie. He got out just in time. Like,
right. It's, I mean, if you think about it, like his head writer for a long time was Meryl Marco. She created that sort of man on the street, the dumb animal tricks, the dumb people tricks, all of those sketches that he did for the show, the panel show. She created most of those. And they were also in a relationship, for 10, 15 years. And then it turns out he was having affairs, and it sort of fell apart. And so she left, and then he married someone young enough to be his daughter. That's right. And then but it doesn't. But so I say that, but as this generation woman comic, I'm just like, but he's a nice enough guy, just stand by the door. And so I mean, there's these old dinosaur comics that you're like, that's how it was. Okay, you got out just in time. You get a pass.
Yeah.
I don't want a 30-year-old version of that guy.
That's right.
I don't want a 35-year-old version of that guy.
I mean,
and we all need to not tolerate it to some extent.
I mean, yeah, I agree. I okay. And there are also two things, right? One thing is being very difficult. The other is, pulling your pants down and saying, "Hey, do you like what you see?" Right? Those are two kind of separate things we're looking at. I think in Ellen's case, she was just very difficult to work with. I'm not hearing sexual allegations or anything.
No, though I understand that and I have not heard enough of the allegations either, but there was some racial problems as well. But I think it manifested. Here's something about racism. I would like to build myself a small statue. Here, whenever I've gotten mad
at that job, Jackie, let me take over that position.
It's whenever I've gotten mad at somebody who happens to be black or brown or gay or trans, I have never reduced it to name calling about what they look like or what their jam is, right? I've always just gone to a nice gender neutral asshole. Hey, you're a fucking piece of shit.
Exactly.
Which I think it's nice. It's blankety. It covers it. They get it that I'm not happy with them, that they've done something incorrect.
Exactly.
They don't need to be called a name. Some weird ass. I once punched a heckler. And this isn't okay. But here's it's early days, 1986. Anyway, so I'm doing a one-nighter, a four-waller in a Best Western bar, right? And I'm on stage and I'm eating it, and there's hecklers and they won't shut up. And so I get off stage and I walk by the hecklers. A 10-minute set, it did not go well. Shall we say? I did the best I could. I tried to deal with the two hecklers. There were other hecklers, but I had to walk.
Jackie.
I walked by the two hecklers. One of them has passed out. He's head down on the table. The other heckler still talking to me as I walk past him. And the comic on stage, who happened to be Steve Marmel, was like, "Hey man, heckle me. I'm up here now. Hey." Anyway, but that guy did not. He didn't. He kept talking to me. So I go up to the bar and I'm mad, like you are when you didn't have a good set. And I order a beer and I get a mug of beer and I'm drinking my beer, fuming. And the heckler guy comes and stands right behind me. He's about 6 feet tall. And I make a very, very mature decision at the age of 20 that I'm going to, if this guy talks to me one more time, I'm going to throw my beer at him. It's not a mature decision. I do not recommend this. But instead, I feel him touch my shoulder. And I was told later by the bouncer and by the bartender that he was reaching over my shoulder to grab my boob. Yeah, right. I didn't see. I just heard him touch my shoulder. I turn around, throw my beer at him, missing him completely, hitting the man behind him full in the face.
No!
I know. So this story, by the way, has a great button. But the thing is so the heckler then picks up that guy's drink and whips it at me. And so I'm soaked. The guy behind the heckler's soaked, and that guy starts laughing. I punch him right in the face, forgetting that I'm holding the beer mug. So I clocked him with the beer mug, dropped him. He falls to the ground. He gets up and he starts screaming at me, "You fucking dyke," is what he yells at me. And I said, "You got a problem with homosexuality, faggot?" This is not my strongest. This is not my finest moment. There's violence, there's name calling, there's drunkenness. It isn't good. And they separated us. They kicked us both out of the club, by the way, and we never dated because it wasn't a romantic comedy. But there is an addendum to this.
As Hollywood would have you believed.
As Hollywood would have you believe, we would now be married. But here's the addendum to that story. 5-6 years later, I'm doing a one-nighter. I'm featuring for a guitar comic from Wisconsin whose name I can never remember. He's got a guitar, perfectly nice guy. We're driving together in the car. We're exchanging heckler stories. The guitar comic driving, the headliner, tells me my own story. He tells me that story. He was the guy who got hit with the drink. And I was like, wait, you were the guy. And so we literally, it was 1991, I think. We had to pull over and use a payphone so he could call his wife and I could call my sister. And we had to tell people that we had finally reunited. And so I hit another comic with my drink. And then we worked together on the road 6 years later.
That is a fantastic story, Jackie.
An amazing story.
Absolutely fantastic. It freaking reminds me, whenever I do the road, I think one of the things that I always like to ask the comics that I'm working with is like, do you experience physical violence? Because your job has this hazardous part to it that I think a lot of people don't know, that people try to come and like physically attack you or try to challenge you to a fucking fight after a show. Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing There can be physical. You have to. It isn't the safest gig in the world, but no, it isn't. But it's you're gonna live your life in fear. You're not gonna. You gotta do stand-up comedy.
Jackie, I was doing a show in DC about 2 years ago, and it was a college gig. It was a day gig, college gig. I did it, and then in the evening, I got invited to headline 2 shows, like 2 places across the street from each other. Okay,
awesome.
So I headline one, have a great time. I go across and I walk in. It's not a lot of people. There are these 3 women that are sitting up front, the white ladies, and they're sitting up front. And one is like absolutely shit-faced, and she's heckling every comic that's going on stage. And two of them were gay, and I think they were together. They were lovers, right? So I notice every comic that goes up is fucking getting heckled and nobody's calling these women out. I'm like, this is ridiculous, I'm like, shit. I was like, if they fucking heckled me, we know how this shit's gonna go down. So I go on stage and I start telling my joke, and I'm telling a Bill Cosby joke, and it's not about rape, it's about Bill Cosby because he's a piece of shit. And I'm like in the middle, I'm about to tell the punchline, and she's like, I didn't hear you. And I was like, if you keep quiet, you would hear what I have to say. So, shh, okay? I carry on. I'm about to tell a second joke, okay? And she's like, rape isn't funny. And I'm like, nobody fucking said rape was funny. I was like, I'm going to give you 2 options. I said, either you're going to shut the fuck up or get the fuck out. So what's it going to be? Okay? So all the comics in the back start applauding. I'm like, fuck you guys. I'm like, you should have been here a long time ago. I'm like, why do I have to clean up this mess? Okay. Yep. So the more on the I would say the butchy side lover person was at the bar, and she sees me telling her girlfriend to fuck off. So she walks up to me on stage and puts her forehead on my forehead and starts to push me back. Okay? She wants to get in a physical fist fight with me. Jack.
Are you in Yellowstone? And are you two moose? What's happening?
I didn't even know. I had never experienced this kind of thing in my life. That's insanity. So I'm like, what the fuck? So I'm like, you know what, bitch? I grew up in New York. If you want to fucking go, we can go. Let's go. Right? Let's fucking punch each other's lights out. I was like, cause I'm not fucking going down. Fuck you. Right? So she started pushing me back. So all the other comedian friends, they get in and they start like pulling us apart. I'm like, no, fuck her. I'm like, I'm going to fucking knock her lights out here, you know? So it's getting really crazy. So she goes to me, why don't you be funnier? Why don't you be funnier? So, you know, I'm just like, oh, you want me to be funnier? Here's a joke for you. I'm like, how is it that you eat so much pussy, but you got a motherfucking horse face, bitch? How the fuck does that work? And everybody loses their fucking mind. Again, it's not my greatest moment.
No, these are not. The thing is they're just war stories. You know, they're just like
they're just in the moment. You know,
right? And because you have to. The problem is that if you don't stand up,
yes,
then they win.
Yes,
you can't. You have to control the room.
Yes,
you can't. And the thing is I have known comics who are like, oh, fuck that. I don't actually care that much. And I was like, I wish I had that attitude to some extent, but I don't. I don't have a lot of back down in me. Yes. I wish I had. I wish I were more even. And I am getting more even, right? I mean, the thing is how can it? Why? But I know this too. A lot of people don't understand this. If you don't do your time, you do not get paid.
Yeah,
don't get paid. I did a show in Montana. Mm-hmm. And what the comic I was working with, I was closing, and the owner of the club came over and said, "I don't like her. I want her to get off early." And I said, "She won't." And he goes, "Well, what? Can't we just light her and she'll get off?" And I said, "No, because you hired her to do a certain amount of time, and she's going to do every minute of it because she needs to get paid." And he's like, "Well, I just want her. I don't like her." And I said, "Yeah, well, you hired her. Yeah. She's going to do her time." Yeah. And she, to the second, because he started lighting her at 30. Yeah. And she did 45. And we were all doing 40. It was a dumb production, but too long. The show's too long. Anyway, his error. Anyway, so he's lighting her, and I was like, she's not leaving. She is a professional comedian and will be doing every moment that you hired her to do, so that you have no excuse not to sign the goddamn check.
Exactly. I feel like I feel whenever, like, it's like moments like this, and you know, the craziest thing is, Jackie, that's like maybe 3 or 4 months after that, I'm in the Valley. I don't know, doing some bar show for fun. Okay. And like for fun, like just working out new stuff. And my name gets called, and there's this girl sitting in the back. She's like applauding really loudly for me to get her. I'm like, who the fuck is this? You know, who is this person? So I get done. I get off stage. I come back, and she comes and sits next to me, and she's like, she's like, you were in DC, weren't you, 3-4 months ago? And I was like,
she was at the
I was like, who are you? Who are you? And she was like, I was there that night. She was like, I was there that night when you called the bitches out. She was like, can I tell you something, what you did for me that night? And I was like, no, please do tell. I hope I didn't ruin you. What did I do? She's like, so I'm really new to comedy. And there was this other young girl. She was next to me, and she was new to comedy. And when we saw you stand up to those hecklers, it gave us so much courage. And now we don't take shit from anybody.
Right. I'll tell you this, is when I first moved to, that's awesome. That is so fun. I mean, the thing is there's part of you that wants no witnesses so you can tell the story like you want to tell the story. And another part of you is like, you were there with the Nazis at the Rosemont Zanies.
I was scared because it was the name calling that had happened, and it scared me.
It's terrifying. The thing is it's it is, you genuinely, there was a woman in a Trump hat in the front row at Rosemont Zanies, and I was genuinely afraid for my life. And I did
How long was this?
10 months ago. It was, and she knew what she was doing, and she ruined the show for everyone. And much of the rest of the audience didn't understand why I couldn't ignore it, except for that live comedy. She was literally whispering and saying, she was in the front row center. She had paid extra for her birthday so that she could come fucking ruin the show. And she was whispering shit at me the whole time. And I was the only one who could hear it. And so I tried to explain that to the rest of the audience. They still walked like 40 people. But it was genuinely, I mean, those people carry guns. Mm-hmm. There's shootings in bars and restaurants and places all the time, where there were before we were all hunkered down. And I was scared. And so it ended up, and I said, how long have you been a Nazi? And she said, I've always been one. And I said, and then I called her a cunt, and then they got,
I love you.
Then the people got mad at me. And I said, well, then we're done, cunt. We're done. I got nothing to say to you. If you are a fascist, if you identify as a white supremacist, you're insane.
Exactly.
And a fucking monster.
Exactly.
Feel free. She shouldn't have been seated where it wasn't a rally.
Yep.
She shouldn't have been seated with, I mean, someone wearing a Black Lives Matter hat. I wouldn't have cared, because I know that it's part of an entire sentence. Black Lives Matter, because we say that because so obviously have not been treated like that. That's the whole sentence. It's something like that. Anyway, so but it's not, it wasn't a political event. She was coming to a bar, no hat. There's a lot of bars that won't let you wear colors and hats and logos and other bullshit. How about that? And the staff couldn't protect me. They didn't know what the fuck was going on. They were scared, and so they let me just stand up there by myself. And it was genuinely, I was afraid for my life. And then afterwards, they cornered me, and I had to put my hands on the guy to push him away. Whoa. And as soon as I touched him, then the staff came and I was like, you were correct. I should not have placed a hand on him, but he was backing me into a corner.
How many people, Jackie? How many people backing you in the corner?
It was the woman and then the guy who looked like Leonid Brezhnev. I don't know why I know what Leonid Brezhnev looks like.
I don't know who that is. But...
He used to be the premier of the Soviet Union back in the 12th century. Anyway, a long time ago. But for some, problem. Anyway,
and they were doing this because you had made a political statement, or you had said something that triggered them?
Essentially, this woman it was her birthday, and she was a Trump supporter, and she wanted to go fuck with somebody. And so she looked to see who was playing at the different comedy clubs. And my Twitter feed is just, hey, ICE, people who work at ICE, get a new job. That's a shitty job. I know you like raping children, but seriously, your grandchildren are going to deny your existence.
Yeah.
So anyway, and the thing is it was so scary. And then I had 5 more shows that week. It was the second show of the week. And I was like,
at the same bar or different?
Same club.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. Did you go and tell the staff or the manager to be like, hey, I was genuinely worried about my safety? Like, did you?
We talked about it the next day with the manager. The manager that night was a very nice young man who's relatively new. Mm-hmm. If the general manager who was there the next night.
Yeah.
He had to, and that poor bastard, we both had a bad day at work, Mona. Yeah. I had a terrifying day at work, and he had a bad day at work where the rest of the audience called in and said, she called that woman a cunt. It was not fun. It wasn't a fun show. And so he had to refund people and do all. And so I walked into so when we first saw each other, the manager who I don't know and me, he said to me, sit down. In that tone of voice. And I said, oh, is this my fault? And so we both brought it up a notch. And then I said, why don't we bring it down a notch? So I have learned some patience, you know, because I don't have a lot of back down, but I also have some empathy. I can figure out that he had a bad day too. And so we talked it out, and I was like, what do you want to do? Do you want me to go home? Do you want me not to do this thing? But the thing is if he said that I had to go home, he had to pay me for the week. And so he was hoping maybe that I would say I'm going to go home, and then he wouldn't have to pay me for the week. But I'm like, oh no, jackass. No.
I'm still saying, yeah. You still have to pay me. Pay me, bitch. That's right. So did we bring it down a few notches, and did it work out?
Yeah. And then we just sanely talked about what a terrible experience that was, and how that let's not do that. And he was like, so tonight, and I was like, yeah, tonight. We're hoping I'm just going to do stand-up comedy, and the audience is going to watch that stand-up comedy. Yeah. And so the rest of the week was fine.
You know, Jackie, I think a lot of people who are not in the stand-up comedy world think that heckling is comedy, but it is not fucking comedy.
No.
It's like heckling is like going to somebody's job, right? If somebody has a desk job and then going there and pouring coffee on their desk and like poking,
just knocking over their inbox, and you're like, you didn't need those papers, right? Let me push over your computer.
That's what heckling is to us. Like we work years and years, hours upon hours to work out this material. We finally get, booked for a paid gig. We finally show up to do our job, and then some cunt would have
jokes to do
there.
You know what I got? If I have 45 minutes, I'm telling you 60 minutes worth of jokes, because you have the rest of your life to laugh at this shit. Yeah. I only have 45 minutes to talk to you. That's right. Speaking of which, we've been doing this for like 2 hours. How long are we hanging out?
Oh, we're almost done. We're gonna
I love it. This has been fascinating. I thought it was an hour, and then as we hit, I was like, no, I'm still in. I'm still on board. Well, I don't know if anyone's still listening.
I hope you were having fun, because
I am really having fun. Yeah, I would have mentioned 50 minutes ago.
I'm having a lot of fun. Let's see. We have like some comments here. It says, I remember when my brothers and friends came to a comedy concert. They came in a tux. Now what if the comics start the heckling? That's an interesting.
Yeah, some people like to talk to the audience.
Yes,
and that is something like Ian Bagg.
Yeah, I love to talk to the audience.
Jimmy Pardo, you like to talk to. Mona likes to talk to. I don't. I'm talking at you, but I can interact with the I can interact with the audience. I would prefer it to be, if I ask you a question, we can talk about it, and the thing is you should know this, is that it's almost always going to be more clever if I've written it. I don't know if you've seen much improv. It can be bad. It can be super bad, you guys.
You know what it is, so Jackie, but there are two kind of hecklings per se, right? If they tell you like, hey, only speak when spoken to, right? Only speak when spoken to. Right. I don't like to heckle people per se where I'm demeaning them or making them feel bad. Listen, they didn't spend their hard-earned money to come here, spend all this time, all this money to watch me to make them feel bad. That is not what this is about, okay? Unless they come back at me with some curt comment or something, then I'm going to take it and run with it. But most of the time, it's very, I keep it very lively, very positive, and very complimentary. Most of the time. That's how it goes. Yeah. So, but there are other comics who like to pick on people and to make them feel bad. That's a different kind of heckling per se. But that's not the kind of thing I like to do. I don't like to do that.
And there's different kinds of heckling, sort of in the way that it's just someone who doesn't realize how loud they are. Mm-hmm. Like if they're just sort of drunk and having a good time, and they're like, "Did you hear her say that thing?" And you're like, I'm right in front of you. I too heard you say the thing that you heard me say the thing. This isn't television. This is a live thing. And so that's just interrupting the show, right? Yes. Heckling. The first comedy show I ever saw, I heckled. Mm-hmm. It is an indictment against me that I have any hecklers ever. It isn't okay. Sam Kinison. I saw Sam Kinison perform the first time, and I was drunk. And there's nothing worse than a drunk woman heckler, unless you're a Nazi stone cold sober. Anyway, but I was drunk, and he said something about being from Peoria, and I literally just yelled out, "I'm sorry," which was good timing, but fucked with his timing. And by the way, made him very angry.
It did.
Yeah, because it isn't cool. It isn't. You're just like, think of it as you're watching a play, right? Someone has written some jokes. Hopefully, you will get them and you will think they're funny, and it'll be that kind of. That's what it is. But like Lori will sometimes ask the audience.
Yeah.
I don't know why she's asking the audience. She's like, "Any of you guys got dogs?" And they're like, "They all have dogs, Lori. They all fucking have dogs." It's like
where you are, though, Jackie. If you're in LA, yes, a lot of people. But if you're in like New Brunswick, New Jersey, probably not.
People don't have as many dogs. They don't have as many dogs.
They just have children. They don't have animals.
Hey, New Brunswick, get some dogs. They're great. We don't have a dog. I wish I had a dog.
Pull it out and start getting some dogs is what I'm trying to get at, people. Let's go.
Condoms were invented in the 1700s.
Right.
That's what my sister said to my dad once. And my dad, somebody said, "Well, then you wouldn't have been born." And she's like, "No, I would have been born a Rockefeller like I was supposed to have been."
Exactly. Well said. Very well said. I absolutely recently love loved and / very saddened by Lori's loss, that she lost her mom to COVID.
That was so weird, because she spent the last 3 years bitching about, and I will say this about her mother: she was a pill. But but she didn't deserve to go like this, man. Nobody does.
Yeah.
5 days into just being in a rehab so that she could learn to, make her hip and knee work. And then she's dead.
Yeah.
Alone,
I think, but in very comedian fashion, she made it somehow all very funny. And she's also brilliant at what she does. So she's very funny.
That's how she processes grief.
Yeah.
And hilariously, darkly hilariously.
Yes.
But she too is full of rage. She's full of anger about this situation that killed her mom, and she's full of sadness about her mom's life. Because the thing is and it's been really good, actually, because her mom's old friends have sort of come forward, and she's got to hear stories about when her mom wasn't made completely bananas by Fox News. Because if there's she just shouldn't hear the dialogue. It's just a bunch of fingers, man. That's what I hate. I hate the button pushers. They're a bunch of fucking fingers. They should fuck off with this finger right there.
The middle one. Jackie, I know that you said you have 2 podcasts. One is the Dork one.
The Dork Forest. The Dork Forest.
Yeah.
Since 2006, and then the Jackie and Lori show since, I think, 2016.
Wow. 10 years more. And Jackie, we're going to wrap up. So you tell me, where can people find you?
Well, I do sort of Sunday services every week. I'm working on a new album. And so if you want to watch me work on my favorite half hour that needs work, I promise that some of it's already done. It's all very funny. But I do a lot of stand-up online. You can go to JackieKashian.com. You can go to @JackieKashian for all the Instagram, Twitter, whatnot. And then the Dork Forest and the Jackie and Lori show is wherever you listen to podcasts.
Wow. Amazing. Jackie, this was a Friday evening very well spent.
It was. It was really lovely talking to you. You're great.
It was lovely. You're awesome, Jackie. Thank you so much for. I hope I can get Lori on the show, but I know that she's busy with stuff. But we'll see. Hopefully,
who knows?
Who knows?
Right. It's right? I can't. It's good luck.
Well, thank you.
I can give your email address.
Yes, please do. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here and having this conversation. This was amazing, and I just had a great time. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Stay safe out there. All right. Bye. Take care. Love you. Bye-bye. Wasn't that amazing? It was so amazing. Oh, I love Jackie Kashian so much. She's so great. She like revived me. I was feeling tired, and then I started talking to her, and she's like caffeine to me. She's great. I love her. I love her stories. I love how she delivers them. She's an OG, man. I hope you guys had a good time. I had a lovely time. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Definitely building up the channel more. So please do subscribe. This particular episode is dedicated to a very, very loyal fan here who comes on and supports me in every single way. And this one is for my very, very awesome friend, James Harley. James, I hope I did not butcher your last name, but this episode is dedicated to you, my friend. So thank you for all your love and all your support since day one I started these. So thank you so much for everything. Guys, have a lovely, lovely weekend. Have a, great time. Wear your masks. Be safe out there. And I will see you guys on Monday at 6:15. Same time, same place. Love you guys. Have a great weekend. Good night.